thank you very much to all of our 4 speakers. And after this, we are right on time to continue with the career panel. We have 5 panelists assembled here. I hope all of them are already here. Yeah, I see most of them. Good. Who represent academia, industry, and also publishing. And during this panel, we will also ask some of your questions. And for the organization and the first part, I'm going to give over to Ida.
Thank you, Judith. Yes, I assume we can start the career session. I encourage everyone, if possible, if you feel comfortable, just turn on your camera. And so we will start with a very brief introduction from the career panelist. I invite all of them to give a short introduction on their career path, or like anything that they want to mention in this 1 to 2 minutes. Then after that, we can continue with we can start actually with the questions, and the audience, anytime they have questions, they can copy their questions in the chat or just unmute and jump in. But yeah, so I don't know who wants to start, but I don't know if we should. I mean, I would say I see Reid first in line. So Reid, please go ahead.
Sure. Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, everything is fine.
Great, excellent. So I'm Reid, GPCR pharmacologist by training, probably a lot of you as well. I am in industry now, so I think I'm the one industry member on the panel today. But I had a long, extensive history working in academia, both before and then during grad school. And I ended up kind of finding my way into a lot of collaborative projects and falling in love with pharmacology and data. And I had some unique opportunities come up in some of the collaborations that we had with industry, which led me to a startup called Excentia, which at that time was about 30 people based in England. And so I decided to move there as a scientist, and I ended up building out a team and a series of programs there, and have kind of moved different roles in the company until where I'm now, which is director of GPCR Pharmacology. And now I do a lot of other things as well with that. So that's my short little background.
Thank you very much, Reid. We can continue with Matthew.
Hi there, my name is Matt Torres. I'm an associate professor in biological sciences at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia. And my career trajectory is a bachelor's degree in biological sciences. And then I, from there, moved into biochemistry and biophysics at UNC Chapel Hill. And in my graduate program, I focused on mass spec-based proteomics. At that time, it was really becoming hot for the first time, studying mainly post-translational modifications of proteins. And from there, I moved into Henrik Dolman's lab as a postdoc and applied some of those mass spec skills to understanding how PTMs regulate G proteins. I took both of those things into my own lab, which is now focused quite a bit on how phosphorylation and intrinsic disordered regions regulate heterotrimeric G protein signaling. And we do a lot of molecular dynamics simulation and computational modeling, bioinformatics, and a lot of things that I actually wasn't originally trained to do, but have turned out to be very powerful for what we are interested in.
Amazing. So next one in the line is Roshanak.
Hello, my name is Roshanak Irannejad. I'm an associate professor at University of California, San Francisco, in the Department of Biochemistry and Biophysics. I also had an academic path. I did my PhD in studying cell biology and trafficking of G protein in Phil Wittegardner's lab at Thomas Jefferson University. I then moved to Mark von Zaster's lab for postdoctoral training at UCSF, where I did trafficking and signaling of G protein coupled receptor. I moved up from G protein to the receptor. And so currently in my lab, I'm combining both of understanding changes in signaling pathways depending on where the receptor and G proteins are localized within the cells. My lab is located in the Cardiovascular Research Institute, so a lot of the focus in the lab is on cardiac myocytes, which are the cells that we study in the lab.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Katarzyna, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me, first of all. My name is Ciazynska. I'm an editor at Nature Structural and Molecular Biology. My academic background actually had nothing to do with GPCRs. I did my undergraduate degree in biochemistry and my PhD studying structures of viral fusion proteins and trafficking proteins and codes. But now, as part of my job at NSMB, I handle mostly membrane proteins and quite a large number of papers on GPCRs and signaling. So I guess that's my connection to the field now.
Sounds very good. And Andrew, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Andy Alt. I'm the director of the Center for Chemical Genomics, which is the high-throughput screening center here at the University of Michigan. I am actually an alumnus of University of Michigan. I got my PhD from the Pharmacology department here back in 2000, actually from John Trainer's lab, the same lab that Ben Clements just gave us a talk from. And after that, I did a brief academic postdoc at Indiana University Medical School, but then I spent most of my career in industry. I was with a couple of small biotech companies, Epix Pharmaceuticals and Arvinas. You likely won't have heard of either of them, as well as working for a number of big pharma companies, Lilly, Pfizer, and then Bristol Myers Squibb, where I led one of the 2 high-throughput screening groups there for about 8 years, and before finally coming back to University of Michigan to lead the high-throughput screening center here. So I'm doing drug discovery now, just in an academic setting.
Incredible. So I assume, I mean, it's absolutely an amazing people all here, and I think it's a great opportunity for the ECIs to communicate and interact. We are really appreciating your contribution. Thanks a lot. So in general, the questions, we have collected some questions during the registration, and so the topics are, as you can imagine, industry versus academia, soft skills that are required for ECIs to find their way to the later stages, and also the transitions and about like the challenges that they can bring with themselves. So throughout the session, Judith and I will go through these questions, and we were thinking that for each, in order to be able to cover more and more questions, for each we will take opinions from 2 panelists, and then we appreciate if you can just limit the answers like to 2 to 3 minutes, so that we can cover more. And yeah, so the first question actually is the first part of the questions are general, and it can be applied to industry, academia, and publishing. And so the first question that I have in the list is about the main incentives, or for you to stay where you are, or if you had to move, what were those motivations or driving forces to move. So I don't know who might be, maybe Andrew actually, because from the introduction, I realized that you have moved, and I think, and then maybe Reid, I would say. Sorry, I mean, I don't want to be biased or anything, but I hope that it's a good, and if the other panelists have opinion, please feel free to just, yeah. Go ahead, maybe Andrew, if you want to go first.
Sure. Yeah, certainly I have moved a lot. And that's really part that's a typical part of life in pharma. It's very, very common. I left Pfizer when they closed the site. So I had to leave. The company that I went to, Epix Pharmaceuticals, is a small company. Ultimately that company was closing, and they went out of business, and that's why I left there and went to Bristol Myers Squibb, and then ultimately Bristol Myers Squibb closed that site. And so that's the kind of thing that I think typically in industry you have to accept that and be able to expect that you're going to have to move around a certain amount. The companies, small companies go under, or they get bought. Big companies close sites, or they just have massive reorganizations. They get rid of entire departments, or they just have they commonly have a lot of reorganizations, and could be that you were very, very happy there for 5 years, and now you have a different boss that you don't like nearly as much, and so it's and also honestly, that's a big part of how you get promotions in pharma, is that you often jump from company to company to kind of work your way up the ladder that way. So yeah, my kids went to preschool in Indianapolis, kindergarten in Boston, first grade in Connecticut, and I think I'm missing a move in there somewhere. So yeah, there is a lot of moving, and I think that and it takes a certain amount of just it makes some people very anxious to just the possibility that could happen. And I think that maybe it takes a certain type of personality or just confidence or whatever to just be able to roll with it and feel confident that no matter you'll be able to get the next job too. And every time that a site got closed and I ended up having to find a new job and it felt like a career tragedy, I ended up getting a promotion out of it. And so it always worked out okay, even though it did certainly cause some stress every time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That sounds like a lot of instability, and you have to be quite resilient to manage that, right?
Yeah.
I would be interested, Kat, if you could tell us if the environment in publishing is equally unstable, or if you have a bit more of a stable working
the worst
environment.
timing for my cat to jump on
But
my
you
desk.
can also show the cat. I think people would appreciate.
Oh, really? Oh, she ran away now. She will be back. Your question was about stability. I think the publishing landscape certainly is changing, but I'd like to believe that my job is going to be safe for the foreseeable future. But I guess a lot of people hope for that. Not for my job, for their own job. The stability is the thing that attracted me to take this position in the first place. I mean, it wasn't the main driver, but the realization that I might be having to move every 3 years for a postdoc and then possibly for a PI position was a little bit scary. Another driver to take this position was the amount of variety that you're faced with every day. So this is why I'm sort of inclined to stay as long as I'm curious and learning every day. And when I'm no longer engaged in the same way, I think that could potentially drive me to move on to something else, or as Andrew mentioned, to climb my way up the ladder somewhere when I eventually get motivated to maybe become a manager.
Thank you. So, Ida, you're still muted. Do you want to say
Yes.
something?
Yes. I wanted to ask Reid to also give his opinion on the incentives to stay or to move.
Yeah. So I think it's going to come down to a lot of what you want. And I think, the last speaker really highlighted that, which is the different sort of, let's say, personally rewarding things that you get from your position. So the diversity you get in publishing, the excitement you might get moving from project to project or company to company in industry, and sort of contrast that to what you might find in academia, which is what you're going to have most of your experience in with your graduate training, or maybe you're training, as a post-bac or something like that. For me, what really incentivized me to go into industry was that I had a lot of experience working in different kinds of research environments, from neuroscience to molecular pharmacology and other things in between, working a lot of collaborations, and kind of being like, I'm tired of seeing things to a point where you publish and that's your endpoint, and then maybe the grant is the follow-up, and then maybe the grant cycles have changed and no one cares anymore. And I wanted to actually see kind of projects move forward or reach an end that would be determined by some real world value, let's say. And I don't mean to put research on a back burner for that, but in terms of like reaching a patient potentially. And so, for me, it was opening the world to something more broad. And I'm obviously much more early career than, some other industry people here. But, that was really appealing. I think also the changing academic market of one being slightly less stable than it maybe used to be. And also, as the previous speaker highlighted, not having to worry about where you might move every 3 years for a postdoc and where you might end up with a PI position if you're, so fortunate. So while industry does have that kind of, I think, unstable maybe is a way to frame it as it was before, environment, it does also have a lot more opportunity within it. So it's a bit like shuffling. It's not like, there's 5 PI positions in your field every cycle. There are hundreds and hundreds. And, you get to live in cities that are more like hubs. So rather than having one university in one state or 3 in another, there are, 30, 40, 50 universities, and they all kind of can potentially work together. If they're smaller, they work with bigger companies. So to me, it was a bigger world. Compensation obviously was nice. Industry is very generous. And also with the sort of instabilities you mentioned, severance is like a thing in our field here. So if things don't work out, it's not like, you have a month to find a job. Oftentimes there's quite a bit of a cushion. So I'm just trying to maybe make people a little less scared by this idea that every couple of years you might even jump companies or something like that. But it is a really, really big piece of it. I've been very happy with the level to which I've been able to see industry function, and I don't think I would have gotten that had I stayed in academia.
Thank you. I'm thinking that not only the moving between cities, but also the moving between, for example, industry and academia, or academia and then going to publishing. That's always a step that requires a lot of decision making before. Can you comment on what you think about which direction is easier? So I've heard from a lot of people who went to industry after their PhD or postdoc, and then, for example, went back to academia. Or for example, for you, Kat, if you wanted to go back to academia, would that be possible at all?
When I had doubts about taking this job, my supervisor did tell me that, yeah, sure, it will be possible. I don't know how realistic it is. I guess it really depends on what position in academia. Are we talking about a postdoc going back to the bench? I think at a certain point it could become a little bit more tricky once you lose touch with, the ever-changing techniques and advances. And I guess pipetting is probably like riding a bike, right? You don't forget. I think it should be possible. Obviously, I don't have experience going back. I would like to think that I'm still close enough to science to bring back to academia a lot of valuable skills.
Thank you. Matt, what do you think?
Oh, I think, well, first off, I didn't mention, I actually was in industry after I received my bachelor's degree. I worked at a startup company, a technology company, developing microarrays at the time. This is before mass spec became huge for proteomics. And so I did get a sense of that life. It was in a research division, which was exciting. And I did have sort of that flavor of industry experience. But on the topic of moving back, I think, well, my personal perspective is that it would be very hard to do. For me, I was coming out of a bachelor's, I moved into that, and then I went and got a PhD, and then moved into an academic position. I think it might be a little bit tough to come back into say a PI role. But I don't know too many people who've done it. Maybe others have other examples where that's more common, but I think it's a little tougher to move in that direction. That's one of the reasons why, when I was thinking about this transition and I was a postdoc, and I applied for a K-99, that helped quite a bit. I ended up getting that, and it sort of paved a path for me to go the academic route. But in my mind, when I was thinking about it, I thought to myself, well, there's no guarantee I'm going to get into that academic route. But I feel like if I'm going to do it, it should be the first thing that I attempt to do, because I did have the sense that it would be tough if you went into industry to come back for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons. I mean, industry pays very well. You're not under the pressure of getting grants all the time. You are perhaps, depending on your position, you have more of a structured existence and guidance than you might have if you're running your own lab. You're basically running your own business, and so you ebb and flow with the rise and fall of funding tides and with students, and but I actually enjoy that. I do like where I'm at because of that.
I don't have any experience coming from in industry to academia, but I've recently met a couple of people actually at UCSF where they work at an industry, either as a postdoctoral trainee and then apply for a faculty position, or one person actually was a principal scientist at an industry and got a position as a faculty at UCSF. And I think in both cases, if they could develop an independent research program from where the company is currently at, there's always a possibility, because that's the main thing in academic positions. They want you to establish an independent research. And if you're working at a company and that's the company's goal, you can really take that with you into the academic job and start your own lab. So as long as the environment that you're working in industry allows you to develop an independent research, and you can manage to publish that, to have a track record. I've seen it more and more recently that people move back from industry to, or not move back, but move from industry to academia.
Yeah, that's a good point. Industrial postdoc is something I had sort of forgotten, but yeah, I've had students go that route, and it's a great transition way, right? It's still, you're publishing, it's a postdoc, you have the potential to develop some independent ideas, which you ultimately will need to start your own lab. So I think that's a great point.
I think the real challenge of moving, back to academia from industry is that a lot of people in industry don't get a lot of publications. And that's really, certainly at a PhD level, at a PI level, that's the currency of the realm, right, in academia. And so you can I had a vice president level boss in industry who had 8 publications, right, and that would just never support an application to a serious research university, right? And so And so I think that if you do think that you might want to go back to academia someday, I think that it is important to make sure to keep publishing while you're in industry. So at some companies make it easier than others to publish. Some of them make it very, very difficult for you to publish. Some of them are don't, some of them make it not so difficult, right? But in general, that's not what anyone is judged on. When you have your year-end performance review in industry, nobody's looking at how many publications did you get. They just don't care, right? And so people tend to do whatever their bosses are measuring and whatever their bosses are rewarding. And so a lot of industry scientists tend to just let their publication, their publishing slip, because that's just not really measured or valued in pharma in general. So for me, I had to make, a significant extra effort to make sure that I did keep publishing. And a lot of that amounted to, kind of night and weekends kind of stuff, where I would just, keep working on papers that, again, they would, sometimes grudgingly, or allow me to publish, but certainly not going to carve out time for me to do it, or reward me in any way really directly there for doing it. So it's something that I think, but it's important to keep that up if you are interested in having that ability to move back someday.
Those are really good points. I would like to, before moving to the next set of questions, I would like to ask the audience if they have any question, any related question. Please go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, I don't see any question, at least, for now. So I mean, I would like to ask, this one is more, I think, probably more to Roshanak, because I think, so the question is about the soft skills that like a junior PI should have to, to establish their own group and to manage the people and the whole environment of the lab. So it would be nice if you can comment on that.
Sure. I think that one of the biggest soft skill that I had trouble initially for my own career is the ability to be able to communicate your science openly and in a way that both experts and non-experts in the field can understand. And I think that is the hardest thing, because we often go to our own conferences dealing with people who study exactly what we study. So the language of GPCR, molecular pharmacology, is the same. But when you're going on a job market or presenting in front of your department, people don't necessarily know the background. So you need to make it more interesting and exciting and start from very big picture type of communicating your research. And I think that helps if you practice that early on during as an undergraduate, graduate students, and as a postdoc. Talk to anyone you meet, even in a non-science environment. Try to communicate your science with them and make them understand why you're excited about what you're doing. And I guess that was for me the major thing. And then being able to adapt. A lot of times in research, our project fails, and being able to change and maneuver and change that direction of your research is one of the key things. I was a fourth-year graduate student that my thesis project completely fell apart, so I had to move and find a new direction. So that's something that I guess you learn as you go through the process by yourself. And being able to multitask at the same time, have multiple projects at the same time. And in general, you just, as you mentioned early on, you have to be very resilient, because there's a lot of setbacks in in research in general, whether you're in academia or in industry. You wanted to have this attitude, a positive attitude that, something will work out as long as you have the joy of discovery. You can keep motivating yourself to follow your passion and continue. And the second question that you asked, I already forgot. What was the?
No, it was mainly about the soft skills, and also like managing the lab after establishing one.
Yeah, so the managing is something that you don't really necessarily learn as a postdoc in the lab, and you basically model the mentor that you have. If you really like the mentor that you have, I initially started from modeling him. And also, I think as you get a lot of feedback from your lab members, and that was the best thing for me. So be open-minded, listen to their feedback, and give a very constructive and the set expectations. So be able to communicate that expectations. That was a key thing for me, to be able to communicate my expectations and also listen to what my trainees need from me directly, and being able to change it as you go. So a lot of it was based on just changing it on the job, basically.
This is very interesting. However, I would still like to go back to the thing you said just before about the motivation, because that kind of caught my attention. After the keynote earlier this day, Maria told us that she handles bad news in a way where she has, I don't remember what she called it, a good news folder or something like this, where she collects positive memories or things that she achieved. Do you have anything like this is directed to all of you, whoever wants to answer, anything like this to cope with setbacks? Or did you have it when you were younger and there were maybe more setbacks?
I remember when my first paper was accepted, I printed the comments of the reviewers and posted it in front of me so that I always get like excited about after a year and a half of revision, they're finally satisfied. And I thought that was an interesting discovery. And I printed that because that was a major thing for me, my first publication. And I was so excited about receiving that kind of feedback from the reviewers. So yeah, I kept going back and reading those comments every once in a while.
Did you also sometimes print out emails that you received from your supervisor because you were so proud?
Yeah, that also helps. Yeah.
I like to have a plan B. And that's sort of how I've learned through postdoc, and you really have to think about it a lot. And I try to teach students this in my lab is, go in excited about what you're doing, and you may have a hypothesis, you may test it, it may be incorrect, and don't go into it with no plan B. Have a plan B, and usually the way that helps is that, if plan A fails, which it fails a lot, right? This is a common thing, is failure in science. You already have sort of a contingency plan for how you're going to deal with that. And so you're not left completely off a cliff. So I always try to get, I think about this myself. I to get my students to think about plan B. So what if this doesn't work? What if you're wrong? How do you deal with that? Because there are a lot of setbacks.
This also involves being open-minded and accepting if the data contradicts your hypothesis, right? Because this is also a very important soft skill for every researcher, I guess.
Yes, in fact, I like to say that, I want to know the truth. I don't want to see what I want. I would rather have an experiment that very confidently proves me wrong, which we've had. And I proudly display that. It's like, yes, this was my favorite hypothesis proven completely wrong, and here's the data. I try to encourage that because, that's what our job is, right? We ultimately want to know what's really going on, not just be self-gratified by our results. So
we have a similar thing in industry. I'm sure people are kind of familiar with this. Is it's not about really your project, and this is the advantage of industry. There's always more projects, unless you're like a single project company. But like the faster that you get through something, the better. And it doesn't even have to be conclusive, because you need to basically find things that have the rapid sort of route to benefiting patients. And so if that's disease methodology or disease, idea 1 or idea 2, it doesn't matter. And so you could drop one just because the experiments were too hard. You could have gone back and redone them 1,000 times, and you could have been right in your hypothesis, but this first path was better. So I guess maybe, I don't know, in industry, it's actually fine to blow through ideas, great ideas, and have them just completely not work out, as long as you had a strong rationale for investing the resources. And one of the reasons for that is that the amount of resources that industry has to be prepared to invest is massive. And so you can actually make a strong career of yourself by just blowing up other people's hypotheses, or even your own hypotheses, as long as you do it in a way that is clear and rational, and you can make strong decisions from. So yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, it is a different way to think about failure, but it's exciting still.
Thank you. I have one more question regarding soft skills. Kat, what do you think are the most important soft skills that you acquired during your early career stages that you use for publishing? And following up on that, how large does how broad does your knowledge need to be for editing publications? Because I guess you get a lot of different publications on your desk that you need to read?
So the soft skill, I mean, I don't know if doing journal clubs is a soft skill. It's a big part, I hope, of every postgraduate student's life. But discussing papers from the widest possible area of your interest, outside of your comfort zone, thinking about them critically, but not even necessarily that, being able to distill very complex ideas and summarize them to people who might be even less familiar with them than you. I think this is the biggest thing that you can do to prepare yourself for work in publishing, and this is something that I use every day. And it's not necessarily the breadth of knowledge, because the knowledge you acquire, I guess, the longer you handle a certain remit of the papers, but it's being able to not necessarily have the prerequisite knowledge to understand something, but be able to understand it anyway, given the information you're given, and know where to look for more information when you need it to understand the papers, the ideas, the advances that these papers are making. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Katarzyna wants to say something. Jump in.
Yeah. Why are all today's participants so shy? I don't know. I thought then I will at least ask a question. So I want to continue that point about, I don't like to call them soft skills, rather transferable skills, because soft, it has strange connotation. But I want to ask each of you, which of the skills which you acquired during your training really propelled you to the current position, or like enables you that you work efficiently and you're able to like really continue towards your goals?
Okay,
I think people are afraid to
whoever
speak
wants-
over each other.
Yeah.
Sorry, so
Yeah.
I'll do that. Sorry, it seemed like there was a couple different questions within there. I'll just speak to maybe the soft skills that I thought prepared me best for my career in industry. And that was really just being interested in what other people were doing and going and talking to them and getting comfortable, kind of asking people for their time, not just to help you learn things, but like tasks that might help you in your project, but to learn to talk to people about the things that they were doing that they obviously think are interesting, that maybe you find interesting. And from that, being able then to have large abstract conversations about things that you're not really familiar with large groups of people. And then that, I think, naturally builds a network. And I think you find this in academia with specific PIs that, work a lot with other people, but you can really build a network of people that will then talk to you, that you can foster ideas within and come up with things. But you also build then a group of people that think of you as someone who is good to work with. And in industry where, I think there's many routes to different types of positions, managerial, independent contributor, et cetera. Visibility is one of the most important things. And so if you're a person who is, very good at sort of cultivating a network of people who, have similar interests, that you can find ways to help them, that really does help, you kind of position yourself as a person who then people will ask questions of, and you have maybe newer ways to contribute and make an impact. So yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is communication, but not just your own ideas, like learning how to like receive communication from people and sort of cultivate that network of open back and forth from lots of different places.
More opinion, ideas on this topic, I think, because it was quite general and we can get different perspectives. I saw that.
I think a transferable skill, I think, just to handle that part of the question, one thing that I really kind of learned in the application process, the academia, is the idea, and this kind of goes to what Roshanak was saying, which is communication of your idea. And I would say the word vision is sort of really important. My first round of applications to academic positions was pretty much crickets, and this is partly because I'd based it off of my K99, and I didn't really quite get that I had people read it. They talked to me, and I started thinking about it, and I opened myself up to a vision, to a bigger vision, and I think that's something that you have to continue to do as you move forward and your lab grows. You have to be able to communicate a vision that is beyond just the technical detail, beyond the aim 1, aim 2, aim 3, and this is important obviously for grants, but it's also important in communicating with your colleagues. It's important in communicating with students, getting your lab around an idea, getting people excited about the potential. And so that's something I wouldn't say, that's a skill that I happen to learn like in the transition process. So it wasn't something that I had to really deal with when I was a postdoc, but when I had to start trying to reach out to others and say, hey, hire me. I've got some cool ideas. I want to do some really neat things. The way I communicated that really made a big difference. And I've used that ever since, these same sort of skills and it starts with vision. It's not, yeah. So.
Thanks a lot. You were about to say something.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the publishing aspect, because if you write a paper, that's also communicating your research, right? So is it not? I see something between shaking your head and nodding.
It is, yeah. But I guess, sorry, if it was me who shook my head, I don't know if it was you. I also did. I just meant it's like a one-way communication, It's like you are, but
and it only works if people read it.
That's true. I was thinking about the step before people are able to read it, because first an editor reads it and then maybe a reviewer reads it. And sometimes that's, as you said, Reid, it's a one-way street of communication, because sometimes you just get back no, and that's it. What I guess I'm getting at is it's a different kind of communication because it's in written form, right? How did you learn that? Because I think you need to learn to write, right?
Yeah.
Andrew, how did you learn that?
I'm sorry, is that question directed to me? I can't tell who it's
directed at everybody. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see.
How about, like, Andy, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't have a good answer for how you learn how to write. I don't know. I apologize. I'll pass that off to Matt, I think, wants to say something.
Okay.
Oh no, I mean, I definitely was fortunate. I have to say I was very lucky. Henrik Dolman is a fantastic writer, and he bled all over my papers and actually took the time to sit with me and explain, like, this is how you need to think about it. And that's honestly, I rely on that every day. And the vision is sort of comes from the way you kind of solidify the vision as you create the pillars that sort of anchor the vision. And I was very fortunate to have experienced someone who has that skill. And if you're not with someone who has that skill, I think you want to find someone. If you really want to be able to do those types of things, you want to try to find someone who can help you with that in the form of a resource at your institution. I know, like, when I was transitioning, for instance, just writing a cover letter was, appropriate. I interacted quite a bit with the Career Center, and they helped a lot with this. Scientific writing, obviously a different beast, but.
Thanks. And if I may jump in here, I wanted to ask Kat on her opinion on like in a well-written paper, in terms of not just the language, but like there are these papers that might have amazing data, but still the message is, like somehow they are not good enough, and probably they cannot get their way into good journals just because they are not written well. What are your suggestions, or the message that you can tell to the ECIs?
So from the perspective more of a reader than a writer, definitely. I think a lot of it comes down to what Matthew was talking about, which is the vision, and especially maybe in the cover letter associated, at least, with the communication with the editor, and your introduction. It's important to state why you're doing what you're doing, why you think it's interesting, why it makes sense, and what it can lead to. And for getting into good journals, there's a lot of factors that come into that. There's, if some of them are random, some of them are less random. If your scientific question is not interesting enough to the potential readership, that good writing and explaining a story might not help, but it definitely does help the reader. You might try and convey a lot of very difficult ideas and concepts in your results, and as a reader, I need a reason to go through that, especially if someone who is supposed to represent the broad readership. The specialist audience is always going to be there for you, but I think, yeah, just think about the context in which your work fits into.
Thank you. We have only a few minutes left, and there's a question in the chat, and I would suggest that we do a little speed round, that everybody answers the question in like 3 to 4 sentences, and that's the closing of the career panel. I like the question a lot. It's from Magdalena Scharf. She asks, just very briefly, what do you like the most about your current job? Maybe Reid, you can go first because you're first in line on my screen.
Sure. The diversity that you get exposed to in industry is quite high, especially if you get to be lucky enough to be in a position where you are managing a team that's working on, let's say, drug discovery programs. So you get to see late stage, early stage development. You get to see all sorts of things like complex new technologies, things that may never actually become public. So that's really exciting. And I would say just the pace is great. So yeah, it's new stuff all the time. It's rapid, decisions are being made, and everybody's a peer. There isn't a hierarchy. It isn't like running your own business and every person's kind of competing around you. Everyone is, working at the same goal. So that's what I like is and it's maybe 3 things at once, but it all kind of works together to really, I think, get me up and moving in the morning. So.
Thank you. Matt, what do you like most about your current job?
Oh, I love the freedom to be able to do the science that I'm interested in. And really, so that's something that's hard to find in other locations. Of course, you have to be able to fund it, but that's been great. I love the collaborative aspect. I love working in an environment where, for instance, I mentioned that we do a lot of molecular dynamics simulation, and we've got some really talented folks in that space who I can reach out to at a moment's notice. We can go out, chat about it, talk about ideas. How do we expand on what's already been done? And so that's really great. And then the third thing is actually I teach as well, and I love teaching. I really like students, and it's also in the lab. It's very exciting to have multiple folks working on independent projects, and one will come in. I try to get my students always to give me an introduction, like, okay, remind me what exactly, like, where are we at, and then tell me the data, because it's fun for me. I get to sit in a position where I get a lot of students coming in. They're each working on different things, and it's exciting to think about a lot of different projects. So
thank you. Andy, what do you like most about your job?
Yeah, so I think when I was in pharma, one of my frustrations, honestly, with big pharma was that big pharma is becoming more and more risk averse, right? As they get more and more pressure on them to keep drug prices low and things like that, then that they don't have as much money to gamble on really risky new projects. But by definition, that also means that it's probably not as novel of projects that they're working on, and probably not going to be medicines that are going to be as game-changing as ones that would require a significant amount of risk. And so, what again, I'm doing drug discovery now in an academic environment where there's a lot more freedom to fail, right? And so, really able to work on, drugs that could really change the world, but also carry with them a tremendous risk of failure. And I really enjoy that. So I think that for me, being able to work on things that are as crazy as I want to work on. And I get to make those decisions about, rather than have, some guy in a suit and tie make what felt to me like bad decisions strategically about which projects to pursue, for example. Now, maybe I'm making just as bad of decisions, but at least I get to make them and they're my bad decisions, and I enjoy it a lot more.
Thank you. Kat, what do you like most about your job?
It's also diversity, like Reid said, but I think in a different way, in a way of a diversity of topics that I handle. And I learn something completely new every day. And also diversity of people that I work with within my team, but also if I do go to the office, I might end up talking to physicists about the recent conference that they went to, or chemists, and it's a very stimulating environment.
Thank you. And last but not least, Roshanak, what do you like most about your job?
Yeah, similar to what Matt mentioned, is the freedom of exploring any idea that you like, as long as you get funding. But even if it's a small grant, you can always explore that idea, and the joy of discovery of the day-to-day freedom of whatever you like to do. Your schedule is very you have a control over your schedule. You're flexible. You can stay as long as you want in the lab or change it as your schedule allows. And I think one thing that we didn't bring up, career progression is more structured in academia, and I kind of like that. Where your every step is, but once you're tenured, is pretty structured. So I really like that aspects of my job.
So, I said that this would be the last question, but in the meantime, there's one that came in. I would still ask you this question, but ask you to keep it brief. Whoever answers first is going to answer this question. Corinna Weiler asked, do you feel that men and women are treated equally, both in science and in industry? Nobody wants to go. Maybe we can just...
No, Reid has already put his answer to the chat.
Oh, sorry. No, I
thought
it would be not a question didn't get answered, so I just didn't want the person to miss out on at least an answer.
Thanks a lot.
Other people
that
will
was
probably have better
very
answers than me.
Well,
but so like we have Reid's answer there. If anyone else wants to comment on that, please go ahead.
Maybe we can just continue with closing the symposium day for today. And afterwards, maybe people can stay on and keep discussing, because there's ample opportunity for networking for those people who want to. Thank you very much to all 5 of you for being here, making time to be here. And even though there weren't so many questions from the audience, the ones that we asked were submitted during registration. So hopefully there's some of you in the audience who got answers to the questions that they had. I would like to hand over to Ida now for the closing.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have already concluded the career session, and now we finally can close the whole meeting for now. But like as Judith already mentioned, there is going to be a networking afterward. There 2 breakout rooms are already assigned to that, so you can just move to any of them and move between them and network a bit afterward. So I would like to thank everyone for the endurance and staying with us until the end. We truly appreciate it. Before we conclude the whole day, I would like we have one announcement about another GPCR related online meeting, and it's going to be it's GPCR Forum online conference that is going to happen in November this year. Many of you might have heard for the first time about GPCR Forum, so I will introduce this as well here. So GPCR Forum is a platform to foster and initiate collaborations within the GPCR community. And it was actually initiated to continue on what was started with Glisten and Ernest Coast Action Networks. These are EU funded networks. You can visit the webpage of GPCR Forum and even become a member if you like to. Then you will receive emails regarding anything community related, post job ads and so on, or even events that will be happening in near future. So this specific one GPCR Forum online meeting is a 3-day event that is chaired and planned by the known European and actually international consortia that, for instance, includes AnchorNet, Compare, Canadian GPCR community, Chinese community, GPCR community, and Adhesion GPCRs. And it promises an exciting program filled with cutting-edge presentations by internationally renowned scientists, and opportunities for the early career investigators to present. So you can get more information from the QR code that you can see now. And with that, we can finally conclude the whole day. And we had an outstanding lineup of presentations and keynote talk from Maria. It was amazing. And we had wonderful short talks. And the theme-based panel discussions were absolutely engaging, and then poster sessions. And so we really thank you. Thanks for your contribution. And with that, I would like to end the session. And then, as mentioned, we will have the networking session, and tomorrow we will continue with our scientific plan. So thanks a lot, and we can stay here and move to the breakout rooms. Thanks.